What up, fam? I got an order in tonight for this simple little card holder. I really want to show, this takes a saddle stitch, which is essentially the hammer and nails of leather working. And so I just wanted to give a quick example of how a saddle stitch works, why you use it, how well it works. It's incredible. Here's a project I was working on earlier. This is just a watch band I had started. You see the clean finish in there. These things are super strong. They hold up. This thread's awesome. This is 150D, just a waxed nylon that I use. Doesn't fray, doesn't cause any problems, and you can guarantee all your work because it's they're Loctite. So you see in here, I have pre-punched holes. I have a little chisel set here. Get yourself a good one if you like to start in leather work. This one, what I like about it, it's interchangeable. I can take off this size, put on a different size, depending on how far I want these holes spread apart. As I've worked with leather more, I've preferred kind of these wider stitches. They look cool. It's less stitching, but it's also super solid. I never have to worry about it. But I've already pre-punched all these holes you can see in here. So this is going to keep this tight. I haven't glued this or anything. These are pre-punched. Everything is already completed in what I need here. And I have my stitching horse, which is here. It's like an extra set of hands. If you plan on working with leather, you got to have one of these. You get to use both your hands for the actual leather work, and this thing can hold everything steady, so you don't have to worry about it. So I'll get this set in here. There. So I've already gone through a couple things. I have a video if you need to see how to thread your needles. You need 2 of them for leather working, hand sewing. I have those ready to go. Generally, you want about 4 to 5 times the amount of length here to make sure you have enough thread. So I learned 5, but I learned also the more projects I do, I've found out that 5 is sometimes too much and I have excess at the end that's just not necessary. So if you can measure out here as 1, 2, 3, 4, usually that'll give you enough thread for the project that you need. So the last thing you want to do is run out of thread when you're, a few holes short. So you want to make sure you have enough there. I usually do about 4.5 now to start. Also, I have a little awl here, and essentially what I've done before this video is I already punched my hole with the chisel set. So I showed you those earlier. You take those, you get a nice little line here. I have a wing divider right here. I usually use 1/8 of an inch off the edge. I draw a nice little line off the edge here, and then I just line up my chisel set, hammer those bad boys home. Get you a nice little hammer there. Hammer them home, and it creates a nice little straight line for me to start stitching. So with my owl here, what I do is just essentially make these holes a little bit bigger. They all should be lining up at this point. And so I've already done this. And what that's going to do is when you are hand stitching, because you're having to put a needle through relatively chunky leather, so you can see this is folded over a couple times. That's pretty thick. So if you're trying to punch through that and puncture through that, these things need to be, 1, in line, but 2, also have some room for that needle to pass through and to do what it needs to do. So hopefully you can see that here. You always want to start. You can either pick 2 or 3. I usually choose 2 holes shy of where you're going to go. And essentially what this is your starting point. So you're going to start a back stitch here. Again, with sewing leather, you need two needles on one piece of thread here. I'm going to start this in the 3rd hole back. I'm going to go straight through. I'm going to pull this all the way to the top. So my needles are even at the top. So I know I'm working with the same length thread. So from there, you have 2 sides here. You always want to start on the same side. If you don't, your finished product won't look clean and it won't look consistent. If you start on the opposite side, it comes out a little bit, it just doesn't look right. So you always want to start on the same side. And so for me, I like to work from the right over to the left. So this is the front side of this little card holder. So I'm going to work backwards. And what this does is essentially lock in my first stitch. So I'm going to push this piece straight through. I'm going to grab what piece is connected and also pull back my needle right here. Okay. From the back side, I take my other piece of thread and I'm going to put it through this hole on the back side here. You see that needle's right there. Now I grab both needles. I can let that go now. And now I can pull both of these equally and evenly. Now you don't want to pull too hard here. You want to pull a little bit taut, but you don't want to strangle it to where you see this leather start to buckle up. So from there again, I have I have a needle on both sides of the leather. I'm going to work back again. So again, I start on this right hand side. I place it through. Pull it through with my left hand. I take this piece that's coming and I pull this back. And the reason I do that, I'm pulling this thread out of the way so I can puncture through the back side of this leather and I don't get in. If you get hung up on this piece of thread right here, you'll actually pierce through the thread and you'll have kind of a tangled knot when you're going through. So I try to pull these out of the way. Some folks will pull this leather all the way, through this thread all the way through, and then they'll use the other one to go through. For me, that's just, I don't like working across my body that much. So that is totally fine. You see it kind of creates the same exact stitch from there. But for me, all right, so now I've worked all to the end. I'm going to work my way back, and that's pretty much locking these in right here. And then we're going to work our way down the rest of the project. So again, I got two sides here. It's on either side of my project. Here you can see it here too. It's on either side. I'm going to work from this right side. I'm going to press through. When you're first starting out, I've jammed myself so many times with these. I prefer these sharp ones. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I do prefer the sharp ones. They tend to be a little bit thinner and they have a smaller eyelet. But just be careful with that. They do make some finger protection. It's just essentially a piece of leather, something that goes over there to help prevent any sticks on the other side. But I always try to keep my fingers to the side so I'll show you like this. When I push through, I kind of keep this below and push the needle through the top. And then from there, I'm able to, I usually like to create a cross back here. If you can see that, I create a cross this way, which helps me grab that horizontal needle and pull that through a little bit easier like that. So now I'm going to grab this thread that's coming through and the one that's already there, and I'm going to pull it back out of the way. Okay. So now it's back out of the way. So now this one, which was on my left side, is able to pass through a little bit easier and doesn't get hung up in the thread here. So again, once it's through, I'm able to drop what I have here. And you also want to keep in mind, you want this to be consistent. Like I said earlier, you want to be consistent starting on the right side or whatever side's more comfortable for you, but starting on the same side, and you always want this to be the same. So you don't want to go through it sometimes, go around it sometimes. You want to keep it consistent. So for me, I'm going to keep this out of the way. I don't want to go through here. I'm just going to take this needle and pull it out to the side. And essentially what you're doing is you're tying a knot in this thread, and this is already starting to tighten up really nicely. So I'm just going to essentially from here work my way down, work my way to the bottom here. I'm going to punch through the top. Again, I get my cross. I take this left side. I get my cross. Pull this needle through. I have this finger here. I pull this nice and tight. I got my left side here. This is out of the way. It's tight. I'm not going to get hung up in there. I push through. There's no problems there. Pull it. And then pull each side tight again. So I'm going to work my way down the rest of the way here. I'll maybe show you. It does, when you first start, it's going to feel a little awkward. That's natural. It's going to happen. But as you get going, my fingers pretty much just do what they need to now. A lot of times I can do this while watching TV, listening to podcasts, whatever. I can kind of just do this without even thinking about it now. So as you get faster, And as you get more comfortable with it, you can kind of see your hands will almost take on their own life and kind of do these things without you even realizing it. Now this is a nice Horween leather. It's a chrome tan leather. Has an incredible feel to it. Has incredible character to it. And usually these leathers, oh, here you go. This is a great example. So I just punctured the other thread, like I was talking earlier, we don't want to do. I punctured the other thread and I pulled that needle through it. So you can kind of see how it created a tangled little mess here. That's totally fine. You see, I only got like one little tiny thread through there. So all you have to do is kind of find where that problem area is, and you just clip that one little thread right there, and you see it comes right out. And then you're able to pull that through. So I was talking, not paying attention, and that's what happens, right? So it can happen easy. You know, it's relatively common, but it's an easy fix as well. So I'm just going to continue on here. And let's see, this would be a good example. So in this case, I almost punctured it, but I pulled back out a little bit and then just slid to the left of it there. All right. So this, I mean, these saddle stitches are, this is, like I mentioned earlier, it's pretty much the hammer and nails of leather work. It's super sturdy. These things they'll hold up forever. They're very clean looking. As I mentioned, this was the watch band I did earlier. I mean, that's a super clean line. Looks really nice. It may take a little bit of time, and you'll eventually kind of know where you messed up just based on how it looks. If you get that nice clean line, you know you were super consistent in what you did, and that's it. You want to find that repeatable thing that you can do, and work with it from there. And that's where I'm at now. So I've turned the corner here. So instead of working away from myself, I'm actually going to be working up and down now. So same thing goes. I puncture through. I'm still pulling. You see my finger here. I'm pulling back on the leather and the one I pulled through. And this one's going to come through here. So I'm just getting it out of the way so that one can clear. I prefer to work away from myself. Some people want to work towards themselves. Doesn't necessarily matter. Kind of a personal preference from there. So finish the rest of these through. Probably speed the video up at this time just to show you the rest of it. But as you go, you can tell you're much more comfortable, much more confident, you know, once you've been doing it for a while. And it's easy to correct mistakes. Like I said, first couple of projects I did notice a few little, you know, janky stitches here and there, but that's going to happen. It's totally normal. Until you're super comfortable with it and can tell where you made a mistake or go back and fix that mistake. That's just part of it. Let's see. So I'm getting towards the end here. So what we want to do here is just like we did when we started. We started the stitch and we pretty much, what we did here was anchor that in. So this stitch here is anchored in. So let's say a little piece over here breaks. We're good because we got this thing anchored in here. It's not going to be a big problem. Something that you will generally have to do at the end here is because you've already gone through this, you might have to widen this hole a little bit. So again, you get one of these scratching holes, you place it through, puncture it out the back, just to give yourself some space. And I'm going to actually do two because I'm going to do 2 back stitches here. So again, this is called the saddle stitch. It's pretty much the, I'll call it the Cadillac of stitches as far as hand stitching goes. Again, it's a very, very solid stitch. Let's see here. I'm kind of through that thread, which I don't like. There we go. Just kind of move to the bottom of it. And I did. I got myself hung up in here. So I'm going to pull this out here. And you see I'm hung up right there. I can also see what part I hung up. So basically what I did was I punctured this through the other piece of thread here. So I'm just going to take this little tiny piece where you can see it's hung up. That's where I punctured through that little hung up space there. I'm going to nip that. Now you don't want to have to do that too many times. I've done it twice here. It's totally fine. because the part that's messed up is going to be something I'm going to end up throwing away anyway. So now I'm able to pull that thread through, and there's no harm there. Let's see, I'm going to actually go back. We'll go up another hole. Go up, place this in, and this is probably the most common place that you're going to puncture that prior stitch because it's already there, right? And so when it's a clear open area, it's no problem at all. Now I got to work my way down to the bottom, and we're going to cut this thing off at the bottom here. So you can see it does get a little bit thicker. You see there's two threads here instead of the single thread. I'm going to punch my hole again just to give me some space to work with. Work my way down. Puncture through. I'll probably put together another video of skiving, which is essentially thinning out the leathers in certain areas where you're going to be hand sewing. The first couple of wallets I made, my hands were bleeding because of how thick this leather was and how hard I was having to press through there. So that'll be something just to keep in mind. This leather is super soft, super supple. Now from here, this is going to be my end stitch. So what I'm going to do here, you can see the bottom of this. I'm basically going to go halfway through and work this up. So this needle is going to come out at the bottom here. This way I'm going to be able to hide this at the end, and nobody will see it, nobody will worry about it. Same thing goes on the other side. I'm going to press up, find myself, clear some more space here. Clear myself a hole there. Work this left side halfway through. And from here, all I'm going to do is tie a knot. So, over, under, whatever, however you learn to tie a knot. Tie that knot in there. I usually do two knots, and then get as close as I can underneath here and cut that stitch there. If you do have some frayed areas there, just grab a lighter. You can just melt that thing right off. It's no problem at all. But as you can see, pretty clean stitch. This thing will hold up forever. This is going to be, see my Winn-Dixie card or whatever here. This will be a nice little card holder. I got a really nice stitch in there, really clean lines, and this thing is rock solid. So I'll finish up the edges and make this look prettier before I get it out. But that's kind of the basic tutorial for a saddle stitch. I hope you could follow that along. If you have any questions, just shoot me a comment, whatever. But this is the Cadillac of stitches right here, so I'd certainly use this. Come on back if you're looking for more tips on your leatherwork. Thanks.